Welcome back to Metal and Potatoes. This is a part one of a two-part series where we're going to talk about the studio albums of Iron Maiden, and we're going to rank them in order of my least favorite to my favorite. So let me preface this video by saying that I'm an Iron Maiden fanboy. I'm an Iron Maiden stan. I'm an Iron Maiden geek. I am an Iron Maiden nerd. This is my favorite band of all time. One of the first concerts I went to as a young lad was seeing Iron Maiden at Long Beach Arena during the Power Slave tour. Yeah, that was the show that got recorded for Live After Death. I was young and broke, and tickets sold fast, so the only seats I could get were limited view. That means that they're at the top of the arena, kind of sort of behind the stage. Every time the light rig was lowered, me and my buddy couldn't see shit except for the top of the lighting rig. But I was there, and it was great being there. Twisted Sister was the opener, and Dee Snider pointed directly to our section and said, "Your seats suck, but you guys still came out. You rock." Nah, thanks, Dee. That still sticks with me. So what I'm saying is that I love Iron Maiden. I'm a huge fan. Always have been. Always will be. Let me also preface this by saying that people who slag the post-reunion albums as not being heavy enough or not sounding like their classic material, you might want to shut this off right now and go elsewhere. Heavy metal bands, like every band, have not only the right to change and evolve their sound as they get older, but the duty. People change. Musicians are people. Hence, your favorite bands are going to change. It's not just inevitable, it's healthy. So, in one way or another, I like all of these albums. I like some of them more than I like others, but they all have a special place in this fanboy's heart. Like I said, we're going to go from least favorite to favorite. There are 17 Iron Maiden studio albums. This episode, we're going to go from number 17 to number 11. And then in the follow-up, we'll do number 10 to number 1. So let's get into it. Number 17 is No Prayer from the Dying from 1990. So look, the list has to start somewhere. This album has some strong moments, but let's face it, Iron Maiden was running on fumes at this point. It was the tail end in 1990. Maiden and Def Leppard were basically the last new wave of British heavy metal bands left standing, and Def Leppard had gone pure pop. The musical winds had already changed direction. Maiden's brand of history/horror metal had been usurped by thrash on the harder side and by glam on the softer side. Bands like Guns N' Roses brought a sleazy realism into the commercial realm, and the spandex and spikes crowd was decidedly uncool. Not to mention that grunge, the extinction level event for 80s metal, was right around the corner. Adrian Smith had already left the band, and Bruce Dickinson was right on the verge of leaving as well. Here, Maiden tries to have the best of both worlds. Songs like Tail Gunner and Run Silent and Run Deep nod to the old days by bringing the trademark triplets and lyrics about historical battles. Songs like Holy Smoke and the unfortunately titled Public Enema No. 1 try to keep up with the newer bands by addressing modern social concerns. Tail Gunner sounds like a poor copy of Aces High, and Run Silent, Run Deep sounds a little desperate. Holy Smoke actually works. It's a razor-sharp take on the hypocrisies of televangelism served up with an acrid wit. Public Enema No. 1 is also a passable song, but ultimately the album sounds like a band losing its direction and panicking. Still, there are some songs worth listening to. The aforementioned Holy Smoke is a great deep cut, and the dopey as hell Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter is good mindless fun. Number 16, Virtual 11 from 1998. All right, let's get this out of the way right now. The problems with this album are not the fault of Blaze Bayley. Blaze Bayley was and is a fine singer. Listen to his early stuff with Wolfsbane and his current solo stuff. He's fucking great. The problem with the album was the writing. You also may have seen some videos from the subsequent tours where people kind of goof on Blaze because his voice gives out. And again, it's not Blaze's fault. The problem with the live shows from that era is even more simple. Blaze is a baritone. Bruce is a tenor. You can't expect a baritone to sing material written for a tenor night after night without disastrous results. And that's what happened with Blaze. He gave his all on those shows, and I think he did. I think, given with what he was working with, I think he did fucking great. It was hardly his fault that Maiden cratered in the mid to late 90s. It was a combination of factors. By 1998, Iron Maiden's brand of music was dead as a doornail, replaced by younger English bands like Blur and Oasis. Steve Harris didn't help himself any with songs like The Angel and the Gambler or Lightning Strikes Twice, whereby the chorus is repeated over and over and over. Bailey does his best to sell the material, but the sad truth is that there's just not that much to sell. However, the album does have its high points. The Klansman, and that's Klansman with a C and not with a K, as Bruce Dickinson pointedly emphasizes when he plays that song on current tours in the United States, is a fantastic ode to the deeds of Scottish hero William Wallace. Future Real as a stomper that would have been on Home, on Peace of Mind, or Power Slave. Further, unlike No Prayer for the Dying, the band feels like it's reaching for something new here rather than just treading old ground. It just doesn't manage to get there. This is the textbook definition of swing and a miss. Iron Maiden was reaching for something different, they just didn't manage to connect. Number 15, The X Factor, 1995. This is not a bad album. Like Virtual 11, any flaws here are not the fault of Blaze Bayley. Sign of the Cross is a stone cold fucking classic that I would put up against anything from either the Di'Anno or the Dickinson era. Man on the Edge is a rocker, straight up. But Jesus, this album is dark. For all of Iron Maiden's material about warfare, horror films, and mysticism, there was always a glimmer in the eye, a tongue-in-cheek letting the audience know that it's all in good fun. That's gone here, and with good reason. Steve Harris had lost his songwriting partners. Adrian Smith was gone, and Bruce Dickinson were gone by this point. He'd also gone through a painful divorce. Grunge had laid waste to 80s metal, leaving the band, who had once commanded arenas and stadiums, to playing theaters and clubs. This is a dark album. That said, on its own terms, it works. The band finally makes the break from the 80s, leaving behind the half measures found in A Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark. They pursue a new direction here, somewhere between Marillion and Judas Priest. There's almost a medieval folk vibe that continues through every Maiden release since, including Senjutsu. In that sense, this is the album that birthed the modern Iron Maiden. But let's talk about the high points. Again, Sign of the Cross is an underappreciated classic. And hats off to Maiden by introducing the post-Dickinson era with an 11-minute long album opener that rivals Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Alexander the Great, not only in running time, but in awesomeness as well. Like those earlier classics, the song slinks through its various movements in quiet solitude until it doesn't. When the inevitable bombast kicks in, holy shit. And Bailey fucking nails it. For anyone who says the Bailey era sucks, play them this song. It's just incredible. Man on the Edge is also a standout here. Blaze Bayley and Janet Gers get writing credits. And let's face facts, the movie that it was based on, Falling Down, was kind of shit. But the song really gets the Iron Maiden vibe. The lyrics aren't great. They're basically falling down as viewed through the eyes of some English dudes, but as a rock song, it works. The X Factor is one of the more overlooked albums in the Maiden catalog. It's not a Maiden classic, but it's very much worth a listen. Number 14, The Final Frontier, 2010. This one is a textbook example of the slow burn. The album opens with an 8-minute plus track, The Final Frontier. The song itself opens with the jerking, stuttering instrumental passage. The first lyric doesn't hit until nearly the 3-minute mark, and the song itself doesn't properly kick in gear until nearly the 5-minute mark. As a show opener, it makes perfect sense, but not so much as an album opener, at least in my humble opinion. The second track, El Dorado, has all the twists, turns, and sing-along choruses that you want from a Maiden song, but again, to my ears, it's just kind of meh. The album doesn't really get going until the fourth track, Coming Home. Songwriting credit is listed as Adrian, Steve, and Bruce. It's a slower song, but one that demonstrates the majesty of Iron Maiden when they're firing on cylinders. Bruce Dickinson is one of rock's most expressive vocalists, and he gives it his all here. It's a song about England. It's a song about flying. Two topics that the band has gone back to again and again. Aces High, Empire of the Clouds, Tail Gunner, etc. To outsiders, it might seem silly, but you can hear the passion in Bruce's voice as he sings about two of the things he loves most. When he belts out, "We will ride this Thunderbird, silver shadows on the earth, 1,000 leagues away, the land of our birth." He's not fucking around. Songs like The Alchemist and The Talisman would sound right at home on a late 80s Maiden album like Seventh Son. I think that's what sets this album, a kind of overlooked one from their later catalog, from their other post-reunion output. As we'll see later, Brave New World was kind of Maiden planting a flag saying, "We're still here, but we reserve the right to explore other musical avenues. We're not just going to remake Peace of Mind over and over again." And with that, they managed to make some really, really good music over the next couple of decades. Very rarely did they look in the rearview mirror. This album, during its best moments, seems to be a love letter to their later 80s output without outright repeating it. The album ends on what is, to me, one of Maiden's most classic deep cuts ever, Where the Wild Wind Blows. It's haunting, melancholy, and beautiful. It's another 10 plus minute epic track based loosely upon a movie which was based on a graphic novel. The subject matter dwells around an elderly couple preparing to survive what they believe is an impending nuclear attack. Ultimately, they poison themselves after mistaking an earthquake for a nuclear bomb. It's an absolutely devastating song, and I put it up there with Maiden's best. Number 13, Senjutsu from 2021. This is Iron Maiden's latest as of the recording of this video. This one is kind of a mashup of Book of Souls and A Matter of Life and Death. It has the former's approach to songcraft, i.e., the song is over when it's over. If it takes 4 minutes to get the point across, fine. If it takes 8 or 10, that's also fine. Regarding the latter, it shares that album's focus on warfare, although this one, with a couple of notable exceptions, seems more focused with hard and cold military tactics as opposed to Life and Death's focus on the human toll of warfare. It's an interesting album, sometimes fantastic, sometimes plotting, but never dull, even in its longest moments. The album opener and title track set the tone. The drums of war lead into a gnarly three-way power chord, which leads into a patent Maiden stomp, which leads into Bruce Dickinson calling for the troops to set the beacons of fire in a call to arms. From there, we're off to the races in an 8-minute song about tactical medieval warfare. The theme continues with Death of the Celts and Darkest Hour. Both songs deal with soldiers coming to terms with their impending death in battle, the former from the view of a Celtic warrior and the latter from the point of view of an English soldier in World War II. It's the kind of stuff Maiden has been doing since The Trooper, and they do it well. But it's where the album takes some sharp turns and the band leaves its comfort zones where it really shines. The writing on the wall has some bluesy southern rock elements, and when combined with Bruce's older, wiser voice, it really works well. I'd like to see them do some more music in this vein. Look, at this point, Maiden has earned the right to record whatever the fuck they want to record. This record covers a lot of ground, from the bluesy writing on the wall to the war-drenched title track to the mystical epic The Parchment. There's a lot to like here, and this album will take you on a journey. I find parts of it to be a bit meandering, and on the whole, the album is pretty dark. Even Virtual 11 had a song like Angel and the Gambler to lighten things up. This album is bleak, and again, I'm sure that's what they were shooting for. But for me, as good as an album as it is, it's not one I'm going to be reaching for to listen to in its entirety over and over. Number 12, A Matter of Life and Death. So I waffled a bit between the rankings on this album, Final Frontier, and Senjutsu. They're all pretty close to me in quality. Song for song, Final Frontier might be better. When talking about sheer high points, Senjutsu might be better. But great albums have that special thing that you can't really put your finger on, a flow. And that's what Matter of Life and Death has. It's got a flow. This album works best when you start at the beginning and listen to it in its entirety. In that sense, it's a lot like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Not so much a collection of songs as it is a whole that is brought together by its parts. Maiden apparently agreed and played the entire album from beginning to end on its supporting tour. Some fans were pissed, but I really don't understand why. For my money, I'd rather hear a Maiden deep cut like the reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg than Run to the Hills for the millionth time. Once again, the theme here seems to be warfare. Not a shocker. One glance at the cover consisting of a crew of skeletons guarding a tank, and you know what you're in for. That said, it's a more holistic view of war than a tale of daring do a la Aces High or the cold hard history lesson of The Trooper. There are songs like These Colors Don't Run which manage to pay tribute to troops of all nations. It's a nod of the cap that doesn't fall into cringy pandering. Songs like Brighter Than a Thousand Suns convey the devastation wrought by atomic weapons, and The Longest Day ably portrays that abject fear that soldiers must have felt on D-Day. For the Greater Good of God talks about the oversized role that religion plays in people killing each other. It's pretty heady stuff. It's the kind of stuff that Maiden has always done well, really, when one reads between the lines. Again, the songs all tie together well, the way they're sequenced, the way the album shifts moods and tempos, the way the lyrics gel together. If Seventh Son of a Seventh Son was the result of attempting to record a concept album and giving up on the idea halfway through, A Matter of Life and Death is a concept album realized, perhaps by accident. It's an essential album in the Maiden catalog and well worth a listen. Well worth a listen. Number 11, Dance of Death from 2003. Not gonna lie, I missed this one when it was first released. I had hopped off the Maiden train after Fear of the Dark and hopped back on for Brave New World. While I liked it, its true greatness really didn't hit me until some years later. I had missed Maiden's turn to slower, more medieval, for lack of a better word, music in the 90s, and was one of the many who expected more of a return to the sound of old. But we'll talk about that album in a bit. Needless to say, in the early 2000s, I was on the Maiden train, but it was only a short ride. I saw the horrible album cover for this one and simply said, nope. It wasn't until A Matter of Life and Death was released that I was able to wrap my head around what Maiden was doing in the new century and finally went back to this one. I'm glad I did. And I've been on the Maiden train ever since. First things first, though, that cover. Oof. For a band as famous as Maiden is for elaborate album work and album art, it's amazing that this is what they chose. There's a rumor out there that this was merely a proof of concept, and Steve Harris said, run with it, it looks fine. Again, just a rumor, but really, take a look at it. It's awful. Thankfully, the music inside is anything but. Emboldened by the freedom and commercial success that the previous album achieved, Maiden was ready to again spread their wings, exploring a wider musical landscape, and the results are pretty damn good. Album opener Wildest Dreams plays like a mission statement, with an upbeat melody and lyrics like, I'm feeling ready to just open up and go, and I just feel that I can be anything that I might ever wish to be. It's a really upbeat Maiden lyric, and Maiden's telling us that the sky is their limit. With Dickinson back, the band wisely chose to continue their musical journey where it left off the Virtual 11. It would have been easy for them to try to record Power Slave 2 every few years and tour off those semi-annual retreads. Maiden instead chose to acknowledge that they're older, different people, and it's not 1983 anymore. It's a paradigm that they followed for better or worse in the post-reunion era, mostly better, I must say. If Brave New World was Maiden saying, we're back and this is where we are now, then Dance of Death is Maiden saying, still with us? Great, we've got a lot of ground to cover. It's an album full of highlights, and I won't try to cover them all here. Dance of Death continues the Judas Priest meets Marillion metal folk stylings of the best stuff of the Bailey era, think Sign of the Cross. Passchendaele is another song about another famous battle, this one from the trenches of World War I. It paints a vivid sonic picture as the band spends its 8+ minute time creating the silence before the battle, the fighting itself, and the dreadful aftermath. Like Empire of the Clouds and Sign of the Cross, it's one of Maiden's greatest lesser-known deep cuts. The album finishes up with Journeyman, which is a wonderful, mournful shanty. Is there such a thing as a mournful shanty? I don't know, but this is one. Much like The Final Frontier, Dance of Death covers an extremely wide musical palette. It's a great album and one of the more underlooked entries in the catalog. With that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. And thank you for hanging out and listening to me rant. I wasn't really ranting. I was just kind of talking. But hopefully we'll see you back for the next episode. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.